In this episode, we interviewed Navdeep Pasricha, the lead trainer for Stress Less Education.
Yeah, we'll kick it off, mate. Thank you very much. Welcome to the Reach Your Potential Now podcast. This is episode number 7. With me today, I've got Navdeep, the lead trainer of Stress Less Education. How are you, mate?
I'm grateful to be here, Andrew. I'm missing your smiling face. So let's do this.
Very good. So a bit of background. Obviously, we connected through Binnacle Training at the end of 2019. You come on a few road shows with us, come up to Cairns and Townsville. We got you in front of a couple of teachers, and it was awesome to share obviously your experiences and your journey in the education world, and just you as a person, see how you've grown, and just share those stories with our teachers.
Thank you.
Was awesome.
I think you came to my session at the Business Educators Conference.
Correct. Yeah, that's probably where Aaron first got wind. I spoke highly of you, and he's like, oh, and then I think he had a chat to you during the trade stall opportunity. I had to duck out. I think that was
the man who made it happen.
I think it was on a Saturday, wasn't it? That trade stall. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think I had to spend some time with the family. So it was did a half-day stint, caught your session. I think I caught another interactive session, which led on to another conversation. The power of collaboration, eh? And then obviously 6 months later we're back on a call, and you've been in part of the Binnacle family within that time frame. So it's been good. We've got a couple of questions, and we can consulted over the prior to this podcast being filmed. So might kick it off with this question here, just to introduce yourself. What do you do? Let's start with that one.
Sure. Well, my name is Navdeep Pasricha, and I really believe that there's an unsung epidemic on the weight that's put on our educators now more than ever, Andrew. I mean, so many of us get into education. We're so excited to make a difference in people's lives, to shape the future of our nation. But then we're, really taken aback by these things like parental conflict and things like feeling we're always running on a treadmill with piles of admin and email, or that we have a never-ending to-do list. And it's so sad because I see so many teachers, Andrew, just fall out of love with teaching. And that's why I'm on a mission to really, in terms of teacher well-being, so to help create a culture where every teacher, number one, de-stresses, number two, they reconnect with why they join teaching, and number three, they're retooled with the skills they can use to refuel on a consistent basis. Because oftentimes, schools focus on pedagogy and trauma-informed practice, which are all valid things, but they're all improving the engine of an educator. If you don't take care of the fuel, it doesn't matter how good the engine is. And personally, it was my teacher, Mr. Richard Gazelle, that saved my life. And so I'm on a mission to give every child somebody who believes in them and goes the extra mile. And the only way we can do that is ensuring our teachers are refueled and valued through teacher well-being training, both online and in person.
No, that's awesome, mate. It's great. I've got a similar journey. I think that's how we connect along as well. And similar thing, identified a bit of a gap, and just really getting back and just scaling things back around teacher well-being, student well-being. Without that in place, kids and teachers aren't turning up to work in the best mind frame, and obviously then we know the results are ill affected because of that. So that's really important, and it's great to for you to share that with my audience and our the Binnacle audience and our collective audience that this podcast will go through to. You mentioned around stress less education. Obviously that was a bit of a theme around your keynote presentation. Do you care to sort of unpack that a little bit more and share what you do in that world?
So that's exactly what I do, Andrew. I provide well-being training, especially for educators, both online and in person. And so we cover things like, energy. How do we make sure that we're not getting to the end of the day feeling totally flat? And I find that a lot of us, we want to give our families and our loved ones, we want to give them the best of us, but we just end up giving them the rest of us. Mm-hmm. To things like productivity, how do we not get snowed down by emails and admin, so that it's not like we get to the end of the day. Have you ever felt like, you've done a lot of stuff, but you feel like it's just busy work, it's not making meaningful progress?
Yep, 100%.
Or maybe it's things like influence, Andrew, where, sometimes I feel like if you're having a conflict with somebody, or you're just not being able to get on with somebody, it can drag on and on and on and really take a burden on your shoulders, or even things like contentment. So with contentment, it's, I find a lot of people, myself included, I used to keep my joy and my fulfillment for the weekends or the holidays. But think about this, Andrew. Imagine if we only fed our stomach once a week, and what a crappy state we'd be in. So why is it okay to feed our spirit just once a week? And so all those sort of pillars, E for energy, P for productivity, I for influence, and C for contentment, they make up the EPIC model. And so I run through educators through that. And it really has a big appeal, especially to principals and school leaders, because they understand that the only way that what sets them apart from the school down the road, if they want to supercharge their enrollments, they need to supercharge their teachers, and teachers know how to teach. It's just that going the extra mile, if they don't have the fuel to go to the extra mile, they won't.
Yeah,
or they will go the extra mile and then they'll burn out, which is also not, because teachers are very caring intrinsically. And so I help teachers recharge or reconnect and make the impact they want to make. And I help principals and school leaders grow their enrollments and create a culture where every child is given a great education.
Awesome. And how do people get in contact with you and utilize those services that you just mentioned?
Thanks for asking, Andrew. The best way is to go on LinkedIn.
Yep.
And type in Navdeep Pasricha, N-A-V Deep P-A-S-R, and you'll find me from there. So N-A-V Deep P-A-S-R, or you can email me at navdeeppasricha@gmail.com. It's really interesting. I do have like my professional email, but education departments love to have firewalls, so Gmail is the easiest.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. Yeah, we'll put that link down below as well, so people can get in contact with you and yeah, reach out should they need your services, or even just explore and unpack it. I think it's definitely a great opportunity, and it gives schools, as we know, run like a business these days. And as you mentioned, you've got to separate yourself between the school up the road and kids, the byproduct of the student. A lot of students are competing for jobs. And they've got a similar skill set. So it's essentially what's separating that school, what tools, I like to call it the tool bag, what tools are you equipping your students with when they leave school that they can, survive and walk on their own 2 feet in society. So it's, I've been in the classroom, for 6.5 years, and just decided to step away and move into the RTO space, and just seeing a different perspective and working with a large number of schools versus, just the one school. And I've been the privilege to, see how different schools operate, and I've got a lot of information and feedback and gathering from those schools, and hopefully those skill sets are now being translatable into my current role, and obviously having a byline, having an understanding of the education system that they work in has been quite easy for my role to be able to communicate effectively.
Perfect.
Might jump ahead to the next one here. Question is, what are you doing at this point in time to maximize your time during isolation? We had a quick chat off air there. You care to share what you mentioned before?
Oh my goodness, Andrew. I mean, at the start of isolation, I was just like anybody else, freaking out. Oh my God, how are we going to change things? That means I don't get to see people. There's so many restrictions. But we come to a point now where 90% of the time I am bloody loving quarantine. Bloody loving it. More time with family, more time with nature. I live near nature. More time to do the things that we've always been wanting to do but I've never gotten to. More time to invest in yourself, more time to really reflect and go inwards. And something I thought about, 50 years from now, we're going to look back at the education industry, Andrew, and understand that we are truly shaping history. I've been pushing Zoom, I've been pushing online education for the last 5 years, and now suddenly overnight it's coming. I've been pushing things that people have laughed at and things, and now I see whole government approaches to these things. And so really, yes, it's hard and it's fast and it's lean and it's dirty, but at the end of the day, that is the scent of innovation. That is the scent of moving society forward. It is so interesting, Andrew. Finally, people could relate to me, because sometimes if you're working in a big organization, there's a lot of bureaucracy and things move slowly. And then people are like, oh my gosh, Navdeep, we have to move fast and change things and try things and they don't work and adapt really fast and change at the drop of the hat and pivot. I'm like, welcome to my world. It's like, yes. So it's really nice because basically everything that I've been pushing is coming now. And how do I say it? Now I'm no longer preaching to the unconverted. Everybody will be converted because, online education will become the norm. How do I say it? Andrew, it's ridiculous. So regional schools spend a huge amount of money on sending their teachers professional development in metropolitan areas.
Yep.
I mean, like at least 60% of their budget. It's going to be $100,000 or more sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
And even though it was such an obvious problem in my eyes, in their eyes, there was still some risk to doing online professional development. Oh, it's not the same. Oh, how do we get people to engage? And yes, there are problems, but is it not worth solving $100,000 problem every single year? That's $1 million over 10 years. So I was just flabbergasted how people were not taking this more seriously. And now they are because they have to. And whilst it might be painful now, 10 years from now, it's going to be amazing. Don't get me wrong. There are a lot of people who, just their survival, how they're going to put food on the table is a big question. It's a big ask. And for them, I can totally empathize that it must be a crazy time. But especially if you're working for the government or you're at a government school or you're at a big institution, then now is a time where it feels crazy. But eventually moving fast doesn't become so tiring. And that's when you get a culture of innovation. Wow, that was a quotable quote. Yeah.
A stack of golden advice. And I think not only schooling, it's forcing businesses in general to pivot. A key word there, a lot of people are saying pivot. It's a big, big word. Obviously, you need to look at, current systems and processes and operations.
Mm-hmm.
And are they effective or ineffective? And you mentioned their travel and, within my role, like the expectation is we do a number of school visits over the course of the 12 months to check in, I've got a lot of schools on the Sunshine Coast and Brisbane North, which is sometimes an hour to 2 hour drive for an hour meeting, and then obviously a return trip, and there's pretty much your day gone. You schedule a Zoom meeting or a Skype meeting or something like this, bang, you save yourself 3.5, 4 hours of travel time and effectively produce the same outcome. Talk to a teacher through our course or a platform or whatever, and then obviously you just you're becoming more efficient with your time, because then you can obviously shift that time into other areas. So
I think Andrew, you said it so well. Intentionality is the new black. Intentionality is the new black. It's so beautiful. People have to be intentional. There's no excuse for not being fit. I don't have time. There's no excuse for not investing in yourself. There's no longer I don't have time. It's now I don't make the time. And I know I sound like I'm on a high horse talking about this, but I have these same conversations with myself. All right, I put on weight in the first couple of weeks of quarantine in that slump and such. But now it's like, Navdeep, what excuse do you have? And exactly. If you're scheduling a meeting, it's very intentional. Do you know what I mean? And I actually think it's forced the education system to catch up with the times. I think the best, somebody gave this analogy, Andrew, that Kodak has been disrupted, print has been disrupted, transport has been disrupted. It was only a matter of time for education to be disrupted.
Yeah, I think it's the disruption that we needed too. You nailed it. We've been producing delivering content that was maybe not on, relatable to the 21st century, where we're expecting our kids to have, digital literacy skills. We're expecting them to collaborate face to face, but also through various, social media, different channels. I think it's definitely going to enforce schools. And the next question here, it wasn't in the notes, but essentially, where do you think the learner, where do you believe the learner will transition? Because a lot of it is going to come back into their own sort of self-teaching, self-education. Yeah, there's going to be a teacher there to guide through resources, but ultimately, especially these Year 12 students, it's going to fall back onto them, to self-educate themselves, do more researching or reading of literature to understand a topic, or for an assessment piece. Where do you see the shape of the learner going?
I heard a great saying once, Andrew, and this is a nice conversation. You and I have been aligned for a while. I heard a saying once that the more you sweat in practice, the less you bleed in battle. The more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in battle. And what do I mean by this? I mean, because of self-learning and this whole transition into the learner having ownership, this is like a squeezable thing, not a real hammer. Because there are now all these new challenges for the learner, right? It means that they have to fall down a lot more. There's a lot more of them making mistakes, learning by themselves, going through trial and error, and failing forward. But here's the thing: if they can fail, if they can learn stands for failing, learning through failure. Okay, learn. If they can learn more during school, that means when they're in the real world, quote unquote, that they'll be better prepared for the actualities of the world. You know, the gig economy and these things. So the more you can sweat in training, the less you'll bleed in battle. And so now it's a case where they will sweat more in school, but they'll get used to it, because eventually being agile, going fast, being a problem solver, it's all a skill. And don't get me wrong, I do definitely feel for, I think it's nonsense how our teachers and schools are being mucked around at the moment. There's this message, then that message, then this message, then that message. And it's time like this where, more than anything else, we need certainty, Andrew. And for the people shaping the future of our generation, I think the higher power should just say, listen, we're going to take a little bit more time to make a decision, but then we'll stand by that decision. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Yeah, and that's where the next question's going. Yeah, what do you make of the current educational space? Obviously, we know that teachers are now on the advice from, Scott Morrison and all the health and education ministers. Schools going back for the next 5 weeks. Where do you see the current educational space, and where do you see it going potentially post that next 5 weeks?
Yeah, cool. Well, there's a couple of things. First, I want to just acknowledge the brilliant work our teachers and school leaders are doing. I mean, they're taking this challenge on the chin, and they're just upskilling, and they're working extra hard, and they're going that extra mile. And I think for some of them, there's this excitement they haven't had since they were started out as a teacher, that I get to shape something, I get to change something. I have a saying. It's like all this hierarchy within organizations is gone, because you just need a solution, which is really cool. And so I want to acknowledge that they're really playing a huge part, and it's amazing to see.
Absolutely.
The second thing is, I think, two things. The first is, I think it's only a matter of time till our teachers go remote. So like, you're remote now, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I'm really, here's the thing, Andrew, you know what's so exciting? Like, these teachers, a big thing is that teachers and school leaders, they are stretched to the max. I have to go to this after school activity. I have to go to this awards night. I have to go to that arts thing. Now that doesn't exist. I have to do lunchtime duty. I have to deal with this kid who's messing up in the playground. That doesn't exist. So there's all this time now to develop their passion projects, to develop themselves, to widen their scope. And so it's like all the inefficiencies have been cut out. Remember, we were talking about intentionality is a new black?
Yeah.
And there's going to be a learning process to do that, Andrew. But you asked me about education and how I think it's going. To summarize in 3 points, I'll say this. Number one, I think that it's a matter of time before teachers go teaching remote. And I'm so excited for that, because that brings up a whole new well-being plethora of challenges. And a school leader will see that they must invest then. And then it will only become normal once the teachers come back, to show that you must supercharge your teachers to supercharge your enrollments and your grades. Yeah. So you must invest in your teachers. The winning schools know that teacher well-being is an investment, not a cost. So that is my number one thing. Number two is that teachers now have more time. Once they figure out the craziness, once the craziness is gone, okay, let's say 2 weeks into it, then they'll have more time, and there'll be time to develop themselves. And the third is that I think schools now more than ever are going to become more competitive, because what's stopping me as a parent in enrolling my child into the Harvard of America high school instead of the, Harvard of Australian high schools? Nothing. The market has just opened up. I can now send my child to a school in the best school in the world, sitting here on the Gold Coast.
Yeah, that's a crazy thought. I haven't thought about that. That is, definitely an interesting topic of conversation. And let's keep a foot on the pulse, or a hand on the pulse, to see where that definitely goes.
Yeah, and I just want to say one last thing, Andrew. I'm so privileged. Some of the schools I get to work with, people like Jim Ford and Mercy College. Jim is an older gentleman, but he's been, even though he's in a regional place where the options for schoolings are limited. It's not like a new schools, for example, every day, right?
Hmm.
So but him and his team take it upon themselves to say, how can we do this better? Same with Craig Merritt at St. Luke's, or Michelle Gouge, or Ryan at Rocky Girls Grammar. Even though they're in a regional place where parents already have a couple of schools to choose from, a handful, to still ask yourself, how can I get better, will pay its biggest dividends during this time.
Most definitely. And yeah, that brings us to our next one. And as I mentioned in the intro there, you've keynotes spoken at 2 of our regional VIS conferences in 2019, and you delivered a keynote around how educators can have success without stress. How can educators achieve this in the current environment?
Oh, there's so much time to enter. My gosh. Maybe not now. Okay, there's always craziness, but there will be time after the learning curve is done. And I think number one, intentionality is the new black. Intentionality is the new black. And the second one, I want to say that, this just came to me a while ago, that being a victim was not your choice. Being a prisoner is. Being a victim was not your choice. Being a prisoner is. And so for us to be victims, should I say, or, just people who have experienced this COVID-19 thing, it wasn't our choice for COVID to happen, right? But for us to be prisoner to it, it is. And so if we're feeling in a crappy way, it's not maybe we didn't choose to feel that way, but if we're a prisoner to it, then we are. Not deciding to do anything is still a decision, and that's a prisoner decision. Now, obviously, there are some extreme cases. Let's say you're in a highly abusive situation or something like that, or you're a city sex slave, something like that. But ultimately, I believe that being a victim was not your choice, but being a prisoner is. And so it's all about us being intentional in setting ourselves up for success. We know that if we eat like crap, we don't move well, and we don't take care of our spirit, we're going to feel bad. Happiness is a skill, Andrew. Happiness is a skill. Joy is a skill. It is a muscle. We can design our lives to lead to that outcome. Don't hope you'll feel good, design it. And some of the things you can do to design it is, number one, you can have, it's all about, how do I say this? Are you a thermostat or are you a thermometer? Are you a thermostat or are you a thermometer? Thermostat set temperature, thermometer is just take the temperature. And so it's all about being intentional. In the mornings, what are you doing to get yourself into a great state? Are you doing things like gratitude exercises, be it a journal, be it writing 3 things, be it thinking about somebody you really enjoy, be it about looking through a scrapbook of memories? What are you doing to move your body and to get those happiness chemicals out there? What are you doing to remind yourself of how lucky you are and why you do what you do? I think that's something really important. When you change from I got to do something to I get to do something, there's a complete change in your physiology and how you show up emotionally. So to answer your questions, how can educators look after their mental health during this time? The first is be intentional about it. The second is embed positive practices into your routines. What do I mean about this? So Brandon Burchard said something really interesting, if, for example, every time I start to drive, I close my eyes and I just think about my grandmother smiling at me. Or maybe every time you walk through a door, you think, what is one thing I'm lucky for? If you can embed positivity into your daily practices, then you will have learned optimism. You will have learned joy, because joy is a skill. That's the first thing. That's the second. So the first thing is be intentional. The second is embed optimism into your daily habits. And the third one is I call it a joy jam. A joy jam, Andrew. And this is a period of time where you are just jamming in joy. You're doing something that makes you feed your spirit. Because once you are in a better state, then you can give it off. You know that there are actually studies to show that teacher stress is contagious. Stress teacher equals stress kids equals low performing kid. Definitely. So yeah. So if you can do a joy jam, what is your joy jam? Maybe it's gardening. Maybe it's playing the guitar. That's mine. Maybe it's exercising. But choose one joy jam and make an appointment with yourself to do that every day. I play guitar in the morning now before I start my day for 10 minutes. If you don't have 10 minutes, you don't have a life. So those are the 3 things I'd suggest. Number 1, be intentional. Number 2, embed positivity into your daily habits, like when you're driving or when you're walking through a door. And number 3, schedule joy jams with yourself and put it in your calendar. In fact, give it a color so that you can distinguish it from the rest.
Definitely. And that's one thing I picked up off you since our initial conversation. Color coding a calendar allows, separating family time and obviously putting in a nice bright yellow so it really pops out. And then you can identify, obviously, on a week level and how much time are you assigning, okay, how many meetings are you scheduling, and those types of things. So, thank you for that piece of advice a little while ago.
Are my answers too long, Andrew? Is that all right? Or are you...
No, they're all good. We're going good. Probably just roll through the last couple, and then I think that'll probably be it. Hey, we'll cover a fair bit. There's a lot of golden nuggets, so which is good. Next one there. How can parents and carers best support distance learning from home? You already mentioned routines, some habits, some structures, some boundaries. What would you advise for parents and carers who are going to be listening to this to best support their children from all variants of ages?
Sure. So how can parents help their kids or their learners? The first thing I've heard is, make them... Okay. The first thing is to have... Okay. So I've been working... I used to work from home before I moved into an office, right? And now I'm back. So number 1 is to have a distinct transition activity between work and home. So maybe that's gardening, maybe that's, taking the dog for a walk, whatever it is. Have a distinct switch off. Otherwise, you do not switch off. And if you do not recharge, if you do not refuel, you burn out. That's the first thing. Okay.
Yep.
Distinct transition activity. Number 2 is exactly to set routine. So, does the child still wear a uniform? Do they study in a particular place? Do you monitor that they take breaks at the right time and things like that? So the first is transition activity. The second is routine. And the third is reflection. So having a coaching conversation with your child. Hey, what do you think went well these last couple of days? How do you think we can grow better? I call it the grow and great table. So after I give every presentation, I just do a small table. One column says great, the other says grow. I just write 3 things that were great and 3 areas I can grow. So you would have noticed that, we did 2 keynotes together so far. Yeah. The second one had differences from the first one. I don't think you were at the second one. You were, yeah. And we went to the pub. Yeah, so if you can just get the child to self-reflect, then they'll take ownership. And it also gets them into a really good habit of having a growth mindset. This is what went great and what went better. So those are my 3 key golden nuggets.
Nuggets. Very good. To finish it off, mate, any further advice that you would provide teachers or families on how to educate young people in this different time frame?
How to educate young people?
Just how to any last minute advice? Obviously distance learning's the new norm. How do we best get through that and get out of this on the other side unscathed? I can edit this too, so don't stress.
No, it's okay. I think you should add the silence because I've been talking a lot. So add the silence to the podcast. Oh my God, behind the scenes, we're Gary Vee. So, D-Rock. All right, so Miss Andrew, what I was going to say is some people see the challenge in every opportunity. Other people see the opportunity in every challenge. Some people see the challenge in every opportunity. Others see the opportunity in every challenge. You can have the same event, but a different experience. Let me give you an example. You have a baby that pukes. Bleh. The mother is like, oh my God, it's so cute. Blah, 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 blah. And some random person is like, let me get out of here. It is the same event, but a different experience. So 3 weeks ago, I was very intentional about how can I make the best out of Corona? How can I make the best out of Corona? And, there were things like, I could be the fittest I've ever been. I could do all the courses I've ever wanted to. it forces me to build an online presence and community.
Definitely.
It forces me to find new ways to connect with Beatrice, my significant other, and my family.
Yeah.
And so being really intentional and just asking yourself, how can I make the most of this? And what are your goals? It's like we've all been given like a gap year, Andrew. A semi-gap year, all right?
A pause and a halt. Yeah.
Yeah, because all the opportunity to reflect, all the fluff has been cut. All the going to these extra hours things, dealing with somebody at playground. And whilst I do miss human connection and these sort of things, number one is to like have a routine about socializing. So Maxwell, my mate, said, have a Zoom with a loved one or a friend at least every second day.
Yeah.
And that's something I didn't do, and I think it's really good now that I started doing it. And so you asked how can we stay sane in this time? It's all about the reframe, man. You're gonna reframe, ask yourself, write down on a piece of paper, how can you make it the most of this? What is the silver lining? And then be intentional about putting it. Because ultimately, being a victim wasn't your choice, but being a prisoner is.
Awesome, mate. This has been a lot of fun. It's been good to reconnect. What are we in? April, and probably last time we saw each other was November last year. So, the power of technology. And I think, you're right. You've nailed it a couple of times there throughout this podcast. Just, it's going to look at the ways of doing things, the ways of working will definitely shift. And I wish you and your business opportunities, all the very best in the future. And before we head off, just want to let people know how they can get in contact with you or reach out to you, just to revisit that one.
Sure. It was really interesting. Uber, Airbnb, and all these game changers were all started after the last recession. And so that's the mindset I'm having on how do we create something that will serve the world post-corona.
Yeah.
And so if you'd like to connect, the best way is to go ahead and search my name on LinkedIn, Navdeep Pasricha, N-A-V Deep P-A-S, N-A-V Deep P-A-S. Or you can email me at navdeeppasricha@gmail.com. I can't guarantee that we will be the right fit. It's really important to me, the people that we work with together to make a change when it comes to teacher well-being or staff well-being, to grow your enrollments and your joy and your teacher success and your student success. So that's the best way to reach me, Navdeep Pasricha on LinkedIn. I can't promise we'll be the right fit, but I'll promise that I'll explore it together with you. And if we are the right fit, then I'll let you know and we can work something out. Sounds good?
Yeah, it's been fun, mate. Thank you very much. I might just stop.